Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our Pride panel discussion to celebrate Pride Month. We've got a wonderful group of panelists here with us, and this panel discussion will be moderated by the one, the only Undersecretary Christine Birdsong.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. Happy Pride Month. Thanks for taking the time to be on this panel. We've got a lot of people on this one. I think we're going to have a nice, lively discussion. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot, but I always like to start out by talking about kind of the history behind these commemorations. So just really quickly, Pride Month got started based on the Stonewall riots, which happened in New York on June 28th, 1969. There was a raid on a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. At the time, it was illegal to serve alcohol to gays and lesbians. So it was fairly commonplace to do these raids on gay bars. So, but this time, when they raided Stonewall, the patrons there fought back. And there were riots and an occupation that lasted for 6 days. And this was the first time that the gay rights movement really came to the forefront and got the attention of the wider audience of the US. It became a political issue then. Now, gay rights there had been groups before since the early 1900s by my research, but this was the first time that there was mainstream attention being paid to it. So the following year, to commemorate it, there was a march in Greenwich. It was not just a march in Greenwich, there was a march in Chicago. There was a march in LA and San Francisco, all commemorating what had happened just a year before. And the next year, there were more marches throughout the country. And this is how the Gay Pride Parade got started, from a march that was somber at the time and still trying to keep the attention to something that was really joyful, became joyful over time. But it wasn't until 2000 when President Clinton claimed or acknowledged June as Gay and Lesbian Pride Month. And then it was 9 years later when President Barack Obama gave it the more inclusive term of LGBTQ, right? Or is it LGBT at that time? No, it was LGBT at that time, Pride Month. And of course, now we have the even more inclusive term of LGBTQIA+. And I'll just say really quick, because I had to look it up myself. Everybody always does. We know what the LGBT part is. The Q is for queer or questioning. The I is for intersex, and the A is for asexual. And the plus is for all of the other genders and sexual identities that kind of defy categorization. And the term is really meant to be all inclusive for all flavors and types of human beings that there are out there. So that's my short, brief history. Please feel free to correct me on any of that. Did I get anything wrong? Oh, good, thanks. Well, I enjoyed looking that up. Well, thank you for joining us. I always like to start with the question of, what do you do at CDFA and how long have you worked here? So I'm going to start with you, Carl, and as we go along, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carl Baum. I'm the Administrative Manager for the Citrus Pest and Disease Prevention Division. So me and my staff, we oversee all the budget, human resources, fleet, procurement, contracts, inventory, and leasing for the department. I've been with CDFA going on 17 years this year. I started in plant admin, then I went to pest exclusion and plant, then I went to admin division where I worked for grants, then facilities, then the budget office. Then I went back to plant to work in the border stations, and then I landed in citrus division.
Oh my gosh.
A grand odyssey.
Truly wonderful. And how long have you been here?
It will be, I've been here 16 years, 17 in November of this year.
Okay. Wow. That is a long time and you've covered a lot of ground. I'm very grateful to have you. Thank you. How about you, Trey?
Hi, I'm Trey Kenyon. I work in human resources in the disability management unit. I'm a senior personnel specialist. I've been with CDFA for coming up on 8 years. Before coming to CDFA, I was in private sector management. So I pretty much did customer service management, with Java City, Starbucks, Rubio's Mexican Grill, and then Children's Place before I came over here. And best decision I ever made was to come to the state. My wife was a state worker, and we had our son, and he was just born, and she said, I don't want you working crazy nights and weekends and holidays, and so you need to get into the state. And 8 weeks later, I got hired, and so pretty quick to come onto the state, but it was the best thing I ever did, and jumped into disability and found a career that I truly, truly love and value. And CDFA's done me well. So that's pretty much it.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. Glad you're here. Nicholas.
Hi, I'm Nick Communis. It's good to be here. First, though, I want to acknowledge all the people that have gone before us. That way we can sit up here and be out on this panel and not criminalized for being LGBTQIA plus, because we stand on the work that they did. So that being said, I work in the antimicrobial use and stewardship unit. Shout out to Dr. Marshall and my colleagues back there that came to support. We're part of the Animal Health and Food Safety Services Division. I'm a research scientist, epidemiologist there, and I'm fairly new. I just passed my year on June 1st with the state, and I absolutely love it. I really love working here. Before that, I was working at an academic research institute, which I didn't love as much. But yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, good. Glad you're here. And a real newbie.
A real
Almost there,
newbie.
almost here. And I also want to thank you for that acknowledgement at the outset. It's really important. Thank you. Leticia.
Hi, I'm Leticia Regalado. I am the admin analyst for the Office of Civil Rights. I'm also the DEI coordinator, the employment engagement program coordinator, and then also the language access coordinator, along with other admin duties. I began working at CDFA in 2008, and I started as an OT in the marketing branch, and I was really lucky in about 2010, a supervisor from the manufacturing cost unit, her name was Vanetta Reed, saw potential in me and wanted me to learn cost studies in her unit. So I was put on a TND while I went back to school and got took my 6 auditing accounting classes so that I could take the Auditor 1 exam. So I became an auditor and then eventually became the supervising auditor of that unit. Unfortunately, in 2018, the marketing and the dairy marketing and the milk pooling branch dissolved due to the farmers voting to enter into the federal milk marketing order system. So then I ended up in contracts and then now in the Office of Civil Rights, and it's just the best place to be. I'm very happy.
Yeah. And you're running our DEI initiatives as well there, right?
Yes, yes,
Right.
DEI, yes.
So happy you're there. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. The follow-up question is how did you come to state service? I know, Trey, you said that kind of work-family balance is really important. I'm glad to hear that you found that here. I know that sometimes things happen at CDFA and we do have some long hours. And I know especially field staff, when we had quarantines, we're working 7 days a week. So I'm very glad to hear that you have that balance for sure. How about anybody else? Carl, what brought you to state service?
What brought me to state service was a hearing with Sacramento County. I worked for Sacramento County and the Board of Supervisors had a meeting where they said that they were taking away medical retirement. And I wasn't happy about it. And a friend of mine who worked for the Department of Justice said, when are you going to come work for the state? And I said, I don't know. Let me look into it. And I did. And he was telling me about his medical benefits. And I said, this sounds pretty good. I will apply. And 2 months later, I got a job offer.
Wow, that's pretty
Yes.
quick.
It was 2007, different
Yeah,
times.
things are different, that's for sure. Things are different. But yeah, there are, state service, not going to ever be able to buy a yacht on my salary, but there are plenty of other reasons to come to state service. The benefits are nice, the work-family balance, and then just public service, right? That too. How about you, Nick? What brought you?
Sure. So prior to this, I was working at a research institute over in Reno, Nevada, and finishing grad school. I had met my partner who lives in Sacramento, and I knew that I wanted to work in public health. Um, and so it was just a natural place to gravitate towards. I wasn't necessarily happy in academia because we were primarily soft money. And so it's always chasing grants and chasing funding. And there was not a lot of stability in that. And the first job I applied to was here, and I got it. And they were like, what are you going to do about, because I was living in Reno at the time. And I was like, well, my partner lives there and it's perfect. So yeah, I was really happy about that.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it. What were you researching?
I was working in the climate center there. So it was the Western Regional Climate Center. So we handled 11 Western states and archiving the climate data for that.
Oh, wow.
So.
Very relevant. How about you, Leticia? What brought you to CDFA?
Pure luck.
I like that answer.
I moved to the Sacramento area from Salinas because my son at that time lived in Folsom with his dad, and I wanted to be closer to him. So I moved to the area, and in Salinas, I had worked at a hospital for 18 years as a registration clerk and an interpreter. So I figured with 18 years of experience, I'll find something at a medical facility, no problem. Wrong. I put in so many applications and nobody called me for an interview. So while I was on unemployment and waiting to get a job, I decided to take a class at CRC. So I took an Excel class. Then another sob story, I had no vehicle. That's another story. And so I took a taxi cab to the class at CRC. And as I'm riding in the cab, I'm talking to the cab driver and telling him my sob story about not being able to find a job. And he says to me, you are in the state capitol. You need to start applying for state jobs. That's what this place is all about. And so I got home and I must have sent out, not that day, but in a matter of weeks, close to 100 applications. And I received one call from VA, from the Office of Veterans Affairs, got an interview, didn't get hired. My second interview was with the dairy marketing branch at CDFA, and I got hired, and here I am.
Wow.
Also, just a reminder, we need to loop Justin in. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. I don't see him on the screen, but you're there, right, Justin? There you are. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to skip over you. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Christy.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm Justin
What
Hopper.
brought you to CDFA?
Well, I'm Justin Hopper. I'm the Chief of Civil Rights for CDFA. I've been in this role for about 4 years now, but I've been with CDFA for almost 10 years, all with the EEO/MCR. In that time, I started as an SSA, and then now I'm the Chief of the office. So I've progressively moved up in the office since I started with CDFA. But prior to that, I was working for CHP and personnel. I worked for the Department of Industrial Relations doing Berman clerk duties, and I worked for corrections. That's how I got my start, was with the Department of Corrections working in mental health. And what brought me to CDFA is I actually started my adult career in the grocery industry. I worked there for about 8 years doing different duties. I was an international cheese buyer at one point, which was really cool, but you gain weight really easily doing that job.
You have to sample it all.
Oh, yeah. And then I just kind of got disillusioned by working in the grocery space after a while, because in 2008, when we had the recession, it just wasn't working out for me. So my husband was working for the state at the time, kind of strong-armed me into taking an exam, and I've been with the state ever since. So it's been very rewarding, especially in the role I'm in right now.
And how did you come to CDFA? Just this was the job that was most relevant?
Well, I went to college for criminal investigation. And so I was totally thinking I was going to be a cop at some point. And then I decided, not interested in being a police officer. So I started going down other avenues. And then a job posting came up about being a civil rights investigator for CDFA. And I thought, well, I'll give it a shot, see if I like it. And I did. And here I am. Been here ever since.
Good. Well, again, we're happy to have you. And I did not know that you had been a cheese buyer. That's pretty cool. Well, I also like to know kind of, this is another stock question, but it's always so interesting to learn who a person looked up to and who influenced them in their lives, whether it's in the career they chose or the passions or the hobbies or their values. So that's my next question. Who did you look up to when you were growing up, and how did they influence you? And this time I'm going to start with Justin so I don't forget him. Justin.
Who do I look up to? So that's a hard one for me because I've never really had like a role model in my life. And I know that sounds kind of sad, but it's just because I'm very different personality wise and like kind of career wise than the rest of my family. So I didn't have a lot of people in that realm. But I always kind of looked up to my dad just in his philosophies on life. And so, as I think a lot of people on the panel can understand, like when you're growing up as a gay kid or a kid that's different, when you're surrounded by religion or contrary views or what have you, and a lot of folks around me were very religious. It can be scary to even think about coming out or being different. And I remember my dad at one point saying, and this was before I came out to him, he said, your belief in God, you don't need to be feeling guilty. It's not, it's who you are. What's your belief in God or your relationship with God is between you, God, and a tree stump. Nobody else is involved in that. And so I've always kind of lived my life in that vein, just because it really sums up a lot of relationships that we can have with the higher power or spirituality or with each other. Nobody else impacts that. And so that's kind of how I go about my life. And then, my dad thought he was a cowboy. He thought he was John Wayne. And so I was always afraid to come out to him. And when I finally did, he didn't care. And, I shouldn't have been afraid, but, my old redneck dad, I thought was going to hate me, and he didn't, and he loves me, and I think he actually likes my husband better than me. It's like the whole in-law situation. So they're buddies, and so it's been a great relationship.
Justin, do you think that that piece of advice that your dad gave you about spirituality, was he kind of telegraphing to you that you're safe and that it's okay?
Probably, but I was young and stupid and didn't see it that way.
Right. Right. He sounds like a great guy. Anybody else have thoughts ready to kind of jump and answer, or I can call on you?
I can.
Okay.
I guess the person in my life that I looked up to the most, I would say, is my older sister. I'm the youngest of three. I wasn't raised in the greatest home environment. And so my sister grew up really fast and pretty much raised my brother and I. And I was a huge tomboy and got really into basketball really young. And so I ended up getting into travel teams and competitiveness. And my sister was a basketball player too. And she saw that I was talented. And so she ended up kind of coaching me and getting me into these competitive leagues. And then I ended up traveling through the United States over the summer when I was like 12 and 13 and 14 years old. And she really kind of drove my success. And doing that, I, ended up getting a full ride scholarship, and she really believed in me and really challenged me. And she was like that one person that I could kind of tell everything to without judgment, which was really interesting because she was actually the last person I told when I came out. And I didn't know I was gay growing up. I actually didn't come out until I was like 20 years old. It wasn't until I was in college that I even had an idea that I was gay. I was in high school. I was junior prom queen. I was dated all the older high school boys and long curly blonde hair. I was completely different than what I look like now. which is really interesting because when I went through what I did in college, I kind of found myself in that. I think that was the really trueness of going like, oh, I like wearing these clothes and I like feeling this. And oh, I finally felt, wow, I feel like me. And my sister really kind of drove that. And so she ended up actually being the last person. And when she asked me why, I told her the reason why is because I never had to worry. So I
Oh,
never
that's
had to worry.
awesome. That's awesome. I love that relationship with your sister. And actually, what honor to be last place on your list for that. I'm sure, I hope she felt gratified by that.
Yeah, she for a long time she was like, I don't get it. I kind of just waited and waited. And I was like, I just never thought I needed to tell you. It was just kind of, and till this day, today's actually her birthday, but till this day, she's my confidant. I couldn't live this world without her.
Yeah.
She's my best friend.
I bet she feels the same way. Yeah. Great story. Thanks for sharing that. Let's see. How about you, Carl?
So I also didn't come from the best family life. I had to grow up very, very early, and I did not have any role models per se, but what I did have was school. School was like my retreat, and it was this place I went to and I learned very well. And as I got older and I realized that I was gay, the things I learned in science class about how to analyze and look helped me to accept it, helped me to realize I'm not confused. I haven't misunderstood it. It was just how school and always excelling at school, I was able to apply it. And I was able to, in a way, use my teachers as a role model because they always had answers. In school, you asked questions, they gave you answers. And the one thing it taught me was I can find this answer. I will do it. If my teachers have answers to all of my questions, I will find an answer to this. And by the time I was 16, I knew that answer and I was comfortable with it. I understood it. Had accepted it. But I did wait till I was 20 to come out because I realized I wanted to, when you leave high school, you start a new life. You leave that life behind you and you start your adult life. And I decided when I was 16, that's what I would do because I knew I wanted to leave my hometown. I knew I wanted to, start a new life. So I said, I'll just do it all at once. And I did. So when I graduated high school and I started my new life, that's exactly what I did. And I was lucky. I came out to everybody at once. I did not do it in piecemeal. And I had this attitude, if you don't like it, too bad, because I've accepted it. And that's what matters to me. I'm doing it just to let you all know, because I have a feeling you all have questions, but I'm not doing it for me. I am comfortable with who I am. And it went over very, very well.
Wow. I'm glad to hear that that's a good coming out story. I love how logical and rational you are. Like, I'm moving out for college anyway, so I'm just going to change everything wholesale. That makes sense. That's what I'm going to do. And then the confidence that you had in yourself to not be concerned about what everybody thought, that was extraneous to you and your identity. I think that's pretty commendable.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
Sure. Nerd alert. So I grew up in Southern Illinois, in a small agricultural community. And so where I went to seek my mentors was science fiction, and specifically Star Trek. I grew up watching Star Trek, the original series, with my grandfather. And it was the crew of the Enterprise that really inspired me, specifically Spock. He's who inspired me to go into science, because I wanted to be a science officer. As an adult, George Takei now, who played Sulu, being an out gay man, advocating for our rights, but also like learning about his history and how he lived through the internment camps. And just, it's an inspiring and incredible story. So I always find inspiration from Star Trek and like hope, definitely hope. So
I love that. I loved Star Trek when I was a kid too, the original
The original.
series, like the 60s.
Who is your favorite?
Oh, Spock. Oh, he was so funny. I enjoyed that a lot. So then that's a great inspiration for your science, your work in the science field.
Unfortunately, we have to feel the emotions though.
Yes. Yes. Well, that was his one failing, in my opinion, but, yeah, thank you. That's great. Great story. Thanks.
So let's see. The person that I looked up to most was my sister Maria. She wasn't the oldest, but I come from a family of 11. So
Wow.
yeah, so
I'm just saying
the-
for everybody, wow.
yeah. So the older siblings were, my mom had me when she was 44. So they were already gone and married. And so then there was like a second set of siblings, and that was Maria and then my brother and other sisters. And, so Maria was like our second mom for the younger siblings. She, as soon as she could work, she started working, and she started buying my sister and I, the younger ones, our school clothes, because before that it was just hand-me-downs. And I remember, thanks to Maria, we got our new clothes, for school, and it was just so exciting. She was the first to attend college, and she became an RN. And so she moved to San Francisco, and I would visit her there, and I just thought she was so cool. And I knew she was gay when I think it was about 11 or 12 when I found out. Her coming out was horrible.
Oh,
It was just horrible. I'm
so sorry.
But thankfully, our mom changed. So I know it's possible, but it was tough. And I remember thinking at 11, I didn't understand what she could have done that deserved what she got, because I saw the beating. But anyway, like I said, our mom changed, and she evolved. So then when I came out at 28, she still had a hard time, and I had a really hard time. Probably one of my lowest points was when I came out. Not probably, it was. More so because I had a son, and I didn't know how I was going to tell him one day. And my mom wasn't handling it well again with me. Not as bad as with my sister, but it was still difficult, and other family members as well. And so yeah, it was quite challenging, but then things got better. And when I did finally tell my son, it was so cute, because it was during the time that all the talk about Ricky Martin was going on. And we're sitting there watching TV. I think he must have been about 9 or 10. And something on the TV came on about Ricky Martin. And he said, Mom, I just don't understand. And I thought, uh-oh. And he said, I don't understand why it's anybody's business. And I was like, oh, okay, here's my chance. And so I said, well, Anthony, there's something I need to tell you. And it was just amazing. It was unforgettable. He hugged me and said, Mom, I love you no matter what. It doesn't matter. And it was like, after that, everything just,
How old was
got
he
better.
at the time?
He was about 9 or 10, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was this around the time that you also came out to your mom? Or was
No.
there some?
No, there
relapse there?
were, yeah, when I came out, well, I was basically outed, but
Oh.
yeah, he was only 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
And your sister Maria, she helped you through that time?
So my sister Maria helped me a lot during that time. She was my advocate. I mean, she was basically the one that would talk to Mom and say, it's going to be okay. Calm down. She's still her. She's still your daughter, and, that sort of thing. But yeah, I was so thankful. And Maria still lives in, well, now she lives in Daly City with her spouse, and she's retired now. They're both retired now. And yeah, we're still close.
I'm sorry for that trauma that you had to go through and your sister had to go through.
Yeah, it was difficult.
Yeah.
For sure.
But what a great kid Anthony is.
He is. He still is. He's amazing.
Yeah. Trey, were you going to say something? I saw you kind of lean forward.
I was just gonna say, being outed is hard. I was outed too, and it's difficult, and it's a traumatic experience because it's not on your terms, and when you're going through the process of trying to understand what you're going through inside internally, it's a struggle, and so you want to be able to kind of face the world when you're ready. And when you're outed, it's kind of thrown in your face. And then when you're going through family trauma too, which I was similar, it's even tougher because now you don't have your family there to kind of back you when you're ready to kind of deal with the world. And so I was going to say, like, I applaud you for sticking strong and hanging in there, and way to go, kid.
Thanks.
You got a strong kid there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I would like to say also, is that it's so important to remember to be kind to people, because nobody knew at the time what I was going through. Nobody. My sisters, my coworkers, nobody knew, that I was suicidal. Nobody knew that. And so, had anybody at work or somewhere else had done something even more, something else on top of that, I don't know how much more I could have taken. So, that's what I was just going to point out, is that just be kind, because you don't know what somebody's struggling with and what they're going through, and your words can really impact them and make a difference, good or bad. So
Thanks for that reminder. Yeah. This is a different conversation, I feel like, than other panels. It feels just more emotional. So I want to thank you extra for your vulnerability and coming and talking this way with all of us. So I'll segue to my next question. It's Pride Month. It is a time to celebrate and a time of joy. And there's always, of course, this undercurrent of a very difficult history, personally, culturally, socially, but it's nice to focus on the joyful aspect when everybody comes together. But I do want to ask, what does Pride Month mean to you? What does it mean to you personally? I'm going to start with you, Carl.
Well, when I came out as gay, one of the very first things I started learning was about gay history. I had people older than me around me who were out, and so they taught me about things like Stonewall. They taught me about classical Hollywood. They taught me how to watch movies in a different light and pick up gay references. And I quickly learned, the people who came before me, what they had to go through. I was able to be out and not be in jail without a criminal record as a sodomite or whatever it was, depending on the state. So for me, Pride Month was important because it was something I had that so many people before me didn't. They never had any outlet whatsoever. It had to be silent. I didn't have to worry about being fired from my job. And also for me, because at the time that I came out, there were not a lot of gay rights. Yes, California was safer than most, but we did not have equality. So for me in the beginning, gay pride was about that fight for that right. And I was a big part of that. And that's what it represented for me. And now that within California, we do have a lot of equality, it's not perfect, but I have so many friends that are out in all of their jobs. Everyone I know has gay friends that they love and adore. I do not know anyone who is uncomfortable with members of the community. That's not the case everywhere. And so when I go to Pride now, I think this is fun for me, but I know in other parts of the country, it's still a fight because they don't have their rights yet. They're still fighting both for cultural change in the communities that they live in, and they're fighting for the legal protections that I have as a privilege here. And in the last few years, I have done more talking with people who live in other countries, specifically in the Middle East, and I learned just how lucky I had it. I've met people who've seen their friends burned alive, who've seen them thrown off buildings, stoned to death, all for being gay, things that I never had to fear because I was so lucky to live here. So for Pride, I really appreciate it because I know out there in the world, there are so many people who are terrified because they know if anyone ever finds out the truth, it will cost them their life. So Pride to me does represent freedom and a privilege. It is a privilege to be accepted. It is a privilege to have your rights. They just don't get bestowed like a magic wand. They had to be fought for. And a lot of people had to die to get them. So I'm very grateful for that.
Wow. And thank you for being a part of that fight. And it sounds like you were an activist, like not just an advocate, but an activist.
I tried, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you say you're married?
Nope,
Oh, okay.
I am not.
Okay. But I'm sure you were
One day.
you were a part of that movement for gay marriage.
I did.
In California.
I protested at the Capitol for gay marriage rights back in 2007, 8. I was no on Prop 8. I volunteered for that campaign. Yes.
Wow. Thank you.
Mhm.
Justin, what does Pride Month mean to you?
Oh, so many things. I mean, very similar to Carl, because Carl and I are actually very close in age. So we saw a lot of the same things growing up as young gay kids with people being murdered or hurt. The pushback on same-sex marriage, Prop 8, similar to Carl, I also went out and protested that. We protested some preachers that were doing the fire and brimstone, kind of contrary to what I just talked about my dad saying that you're going to go to hell because of who you love, which never made sense to me. But I guess kind of that's the broad scale, but on a micro scale, it's, just the freedom to be me, the freedom and privilege to be unapologetically who I am and not be afraid of backlash. Like I mentioned, my dad was very accepting, but my mom wasn't, at all. And it's because her brother, was gay and died of AIDS, in the early 90s. And so she was always terribly afraid that her son was going to wind up the same way. And I never actually formally came out to my mom up until the day she died. And so that's always sat with me. And when she passed away and when I had the courage to come out to my dad, Pride gave me the strength to feel like, I can't hide who I am anymore. It's stupid, it's detrimental, and it's not healthy, to hide who I am just to make other people happy. And I mean, I was a victim of violence. I was gay bashed in the early 2000s, very badly here in Sacramento. That kind of stuff just is not happening now. And it's because we've fought hard and had conversations and helped people realize that, even though we love somebody of the same sex, or you're transgender or non-binary or whatever the case may be, we're still people. We still have hearts and souls that are beneficial to the community, and we're part of the fabric of what this country is. And I think by having those conversations, with kind of the strength that Pride gives us, it does change hearts and minds, and that's been the whole goal all this time. And now I'm proud I can say I've been with my husband for 21 years. We got together when I was 19. We're going on 11 years of marriage. We're an old married couple at this point because we're now officially over 40, both of us. And we bicker in the stores just like an old married couple would. It's hilarious. and we have the right to do that now. Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even up through parts of the 90s, people didn't have that. You had to pretend it was your roommate, right? And it just is not, it's not that way anymore. And so that's kind of where my headspace is when we talk about pride, is where we were, where we've come, what we've fought for. And while we still have to have these conversations, right? It's okay, because it's continually making those changes to people's hearts and minds that's going to keep us moving forward and continue to afford us the same and equal rights as everybody else in this country. And also recognizing, like what Carl said, that not everybody has this privilege, and we do. And that's such a monumentous thing to recognize, because I think some people don't get that, right? Because there's been a lot of people who have fought, and I think we need to do more during Pride Month to educate where we were as opposed to where we are now.
Yeah. Well said, Justin. Thank you. That was interesting what you said about your mom too, and her inability to be accepting. And it was because of fear. She was worried about you. And you kind of think like, well, that's all the more reason to kind of double down on your love and your acceptance. But it's really impossible to walk in another's shoes and really understand how deep that fear of hers must have been. But I'm sorry that that was an obstacle in your relationship with each other. Damoon, did we get a comment?
I've got it right here.
Okay.
Julie says, the time of they were roommates. We really have come a long way.
Yeah, we have. I've totally forgotten like who I've asked and who I haven't. Is it everybody? Has everyone had a chance on what Pride Month? What does Pride Month mean to you, Trey?
I'm gonna just piggyback, I guess, on what they said. I mean, I can kind of add to the early 2000s, kind of like Justin. I was hackled, I was abused, beat up, sexually assaulted, all for being gay, all in Sacramento. And to see the movement of where it's been from early 2000s, when all that kind of was going on, to where we are now is huge. Unfortunately, it's not, I kind of wanted to add what pride means to me, because it's not there yet, because that still happens to me. It's still, I get kicked out of bathrooms, and I get hackled in liquor stores, and so we're not totally there. I do hear that we're better, and yeah, I can say we're better, because I'm not going through what I went through in the early 2000s, but it still happens. And it happens to the point where when my wife and I go to like Lake Tahoe, she won't let me go to the bathroom by myself. So we're there. But I think that's why pride means something to me, is because I can stand up and I can continue in June to say, I'm still walking, I'm still here. No one's pushed me down. No one's pushed us down. It's a month where people that have gone through things, because my story is just a little part. And there's people who've come before us and who's done and gone through things that I can't even imagine, who's been able to give us the ability to breathe and the ability to walk these parades. And so when I think about June, I just think of, we're celebrating them, and we're celebrating the fight, and we're celebrating these other states that, kind of what Carl was saying, that are still fighting to even have an inch of what we have today and here in California. And my mom, I'm going to say this story just because it just happened. My mom lives in Florida, and she just came here. She was here for 3 weeks, and my sister was over at my house. I was having a barbecue, and my mom looks at me, and she's a snowbird because she's from Maine, but she does the Florida in the winter and the Maine in the summer. And so she goes, "Hey Trey, why aren't you or when are you ever going to come to Florida?" And my sister and I looked at her, and I go, Mom, you'll never see me in Florida. Like, if you're going to see me, you're going to see me in Maine. And she's like, well, I don't understand why. And again, role model, my sister looks at her and goes, you can't say gay. Like, why would your daughter go to a place where she's not accepted, and it just goes to show, where, my mom's mind's like, I don't know. She looks at me, she goes, well, I don't believe that. And it's like, we just have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what pride means to me, is
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. The fight and how much
the
more
fight
there
and
is
just,
to do.
yeah. Well, and just where we're at now, and the people that came before us that have fought to even get us here, but we still have the fight to go. And that's what pride is. And that's what the Pride Month means, is we're still fighting.
Yeah.
You think of Black History Month, we're still fighting,
It's true.
and so that's what June is.
Yeah.
We're still fighting.
Yeah. Reminding of who you're fighting with and who you're fighting for,
Yes.
and helps marshal everybody's strength.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be exhausted, Trey. I can't imagine. What's that like for you to walk through life and feel vulnerable like that, or
Yes.
to have a shield on emotionally wherever you go?
You just said it, shield. So I love artwork. It's part of the reason why I'm tattooed up. But I will tell you that back in the 2000s, when I started getting tattoos, I realized that it made people be a little bit more intimidated by me. And so I used it to my advantage. And I'm actually probably one of the softest people you ever meet, but I like to use my tattoos as making me look a little bit more intimidating, because it will keep people away from me. And so I kind of give a look, because I can feel them. And I can feel the hate sometimes come to me. And so it's a protective shield for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trey.
For me, Pride Month means visibility. We're everywhere. And seriously, it's like, by being visible and being out, we can show other community members who we are, and that often breaks down barriers. I'm reminded, and I don't want to state bash, but I'm so grateful to live here, because I have a friend and a couple other good friends in Colorado, and they're afraid to fly the pride flag right now, because there are individuals in the community that are calling for burning of the flag. And I can say that I'm proud, and my partner's proud, that we fly the pride flag on our house here in June. And last June, when we took it down at the end of June, and when we went into July, our neighbors came over and asked, they wanted to make sure everything was okay and that no one had harassed us for flying that. And that, I think, is a beautiful thing of living where we do, and beautiful thing of living in California, because we do have it a lot better off than other community members.
Sure.
But visibility.
Yeah. That's interesting what you say about visibility, because when I was getting ready for this, I did a quick internet search, like LGBTQIA+ in agriculture, in farming. Nothing. I got something came up on kind of the ag census, and USDA doesn't ask what orientation or gender really, but the one researcher tried to dig down a little deeper and looked at, like, okay, farms owned by two people who are married. What's the professed gender of those two people? And so that's the way they were able to get to some gay farm owners in the United States. Totally undercounted, of course. But I thought, like, that was the rabbit hole that I went down, when really I was just looking for, like, contributions. And so visibility is important. So maybe next year when I check, there'll be some names out there that I can praise and rise up, because I know they're there, but it's the visibility.
They're there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And doing great things. Yeah. Leticia.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I did a Google search and I typed in pride in agriculture, and up comes this person's website, and it was just amazing. In fact, they are going to do a lunch and learn this month for CDFA on the 27th, I believe. So there'll be an email going out about that. Yeah, and they highlight people, LGBTQ plus farmers in various states. Some are going to be from, I think the two speakers that are going to join this person are from California. So yeah, it's visibility is so important. I wish, like, Pride Month is everything that all the panelists said, it's visibility, it's fun, like the Pride is fun, the festival, the parade is a lot of fun, but it's also remembering who fought for us and who lost their lives to fight for our rights. And it's just reflecting on all of that. But what I would like to see is organizations like FFA and 4-H having booths at festivals, at gay pride festivals, and marching with us, and representation like that. It would be amazing, because then it would trickle down to these rural communities where we really need to promote LGBTQ farmers so that they can continue the work and feel safe doing the work. Because it's really scary for them, I'm sure. I mean, I can't imagine. And like Trey said, my wife is very butch, so she walks around and everybody knows she's gay, or they mistake her for a guy. I don't, one of the two. But she gets asked to leave women's bathrooms because they think she's in the wrong bathroom, and that sort of thing. And there's times where we'll be walking down the street and I see the look, and it's scary, because you just never know when somebody's going to actually act upon that anger. But yeah, so it's just important to have good representation, at these pride festivals, and we just need to really push for that, and hopefully we can get some more ag out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that we have a CDFA group in the Pride Parade. And I think the year before last, we were the only state agency. And I thought, and ag gets a rap for being fairly conservative. And yet we were the state agency that was out there showing support. So I was really proud, and I'm
Yes.
bummed I missed it this year. It looks like it was amazing.
Yes, in fact, when we did have a booth, the year we had a booth, we had several people come up to our booth and basically say, "We're shocked you're here. We're thankful, but we're really shocked you're here."
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to get out there.
Well, keep them on their toes, huh? Do I have time for one more question, or? Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Got one comment in the chat that says, depends where in California. We have a lot of unfriendly folks where I live. There are many, I'm assuming LGBTQ IA groups on social media and like ag oriented social media channels. Y'all have allies all around you here at CDFA. We got your back. Thank you for your strength and honesty. Thank you for sharing your stories. And then we've got one more. I hopped on late, but question for the panelists, if you're good with that.
Sure.
Question here is, how do you respond to pride in places that unfriendly people think prides doesn't belong in? For example, pride in sports, communities or hobbies, or pride in agriculture, or any other workplace for that matter. Oh, I said prides is actually supposed to be pride. I feel like I see this all the time, unfriendly or unkind comments where people say, why can't we just leave gender or pride out of it? That's all I've got.
Anyone want to take a swing at that? And I'll include you too, Justin.
Can I be mad?
Yes, please.
No, I have a really hard time with that, because I think that's where the fight is, right? And so I think the response is that that's where you get your allies, that's where you get your people, and that's where the fight begins. That's where we as a group come in and we go, we're not going to have people shut us up anymore. And without having the people that are there to fight, we're not going to move forward. So when you have those places, when you had the and I forget, because I don't think it was necessarily the parade, but Placer County, in Placerville, when you had, I think they did a march, if I remember correctly, but they were like kind of coming at the LGBTQ plus community and kind of saying they were going to kill us. I mean, it was actually really bad. They were going to like run us over and things like that. And I remember that in Nevada City too, it was pretty big. And then you had the Yuba City thing happen. And but I think that's where we get our allies and we fight back and we tell them, you're not your threats, you trying to scare us, you're not going to shut us up. And by you saying, well, we're not threatening you or we're not coming at you, we just don't think it needs to be talked about. That's where we say, well, we don't need to talk about it, but we need to say something. We need it to be accepted and we need it to be noticed and valued because we are human and we are valued.
Yeah.
So I get irritated.
Good. You should. We all should.
My response to them is, well, first of all, I'm not the biggest person on labels, and pride is a type of label. And what I don't care what it is, sports, whatever. When you don't like what your city's doing, you go down to City Hall and you toot your own horn. We're doing nothing different when we want something changed with sports or we want public restroom accommodation. We're doing nothing different than the rest of you. And that's how I look at it. And that's what I tell them. You put a label on it called pride, but all we're doing is the exact same thing you do when you don't like how things are and you want it changed. And that's how I deal with those people is I shove it back in their face.
But very practical and logical. I like that about you.
So I would respond to it, going back to what I said earlier is about visibility for me. And it's to show the community that it is diverse, whether it's in agriculture or a rural community. For example, so I'm a white male and I have privilege because of that. But you don't necessarily, I mean, I wear my rainbow bracelet on my watch specifically to be out. But if I take that away, you don't necessarily know that I'm gay unless I come out. And so then I start to give up that privilege. But it's to let the community know that we're present, whether you like it or not. And our communities are diverse. And if we don't show ourselves, then that continues, that people don't know we exist. And, you know, I think back to when I was in a younger me in high school and seeing the Pride Parade and seeing people that are happy and have found love with their partners was really incredibly important to me because it gave me hope that one day I could find that too. And I think we have to think about things like that, and that's why it's important.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, they basically covered everything, but yeah, it's important again, because it helps that young person that's struggling with, you know, who they are and whether they're going to be accepted or not. It helps them know that they have a future and that they are worthy and that they are loved and accepted. And so, yeah, it's important so that our youth can have that inspiration from someone who's like them.
I think I would say the same thing to this as Leticia, wherein I think it all comes down to the youth and letting them know that there is normalcy in this community, right? We're not going away. You know, and what I kind of tell people kind of in the same vein as Carl is, well, if you don't like it, you don't need to celebrate it, right? It's not something that you have to be there for if you don't like it, but people who are allies, people who are part of the community, it's for us to get together and you know, we're here, we're queer, we're not going anywhere, right? And so just a quick anecdote, because I know we're going over time. My next door neighbor, when I used to live in Vacaville, very, very conservative. He was military. He was a little older than me. I would hear him drop the F word slur all the time. Like he thought he hated gay people at the time. But we would have conversations with him because really I don't know that he felt that way so much as he was expected to feel that way or to say those things to be cool, right? And so we got to know this person very, very well. And we got the opportunity to just kind of explain ourselves and why it's important to us and why we celebrate the way we do and why we have a right to live the way we see fit. He ultimately sold his house and moved away, but before he moved away, he made a point to come over and talk to us. And he said, you know, you guys changed my entire view on the LGBTQ community. 100% in the way that you spoke to me about it. You didn't get angry. You explained things to me in a way that, you know, beforehand I was raised to think you guys were abominations and not human. And living next to you guys for the last, I think he was there for like 8 years or so. You guys are human and you deserve to live your life and be happy, and you should be afforded all the rights afforded to anybody else. And I think that that's, you know, the conversations that should have in these forums is you don't need to celebrate it with us, but understand why we are entitled to, you know, freedom and the rights we have to be who we are.
Wow. Changing hearts, changing minds, and one person each interaction at a time. That's a lot because you're all busy people anyways, and you have to educate on top of it and spread tolerance. But thank you. Do we have, how are we on time, Damoon? Oh, okay. I guess we're over then. All right. Well, I had plenty more questions. You guys all just got my thoughts moving, but I think I'll just close out by, again, thanking you for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories. You are so strong, and you're strong in the way you live your lives, and you're strong in being vulnerable too. And I think that's really inspiring. And you're a role model for everybody, not just LGBTQIA+. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And thank you to Secretary Ross and all the executive team for being such great allies and marching with us.
Anytime. Anytime. Thanks, guys.